Welcome to our open lecture, Music Therapy Case Studies. It's for people with neurodisability, how does it work? So we're delighted to have a few members of our music therapy team who'll be presenting to you today. So firstly, I'm going to hand over to Roseanne. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Roseanne Tyers, one of the music therapists here at the RHN. Just a little brief intro to the RHN. It's a charitable hospital providing rehabilitation in the brain injury service and in the nursing home for adults with neurodisabilities. It has a number of therapeutic professions, including that of music therapy. Music therapy is a profession regulated by the Healthcare and Professions Council alongside other health professionals. We provide input across the domains of physical, cognition, speech work, and emotional work. Here we use neurologic music therapy techniques, which are research-based techniques. And some of the methods we use encompass instrumental improvisation, song singing, songwriting, and use of technology. Today we're going to show two case studies, and Helen initially is going to share some of her experience of working here over the COVID epidemic. So it's over to Helen.
Hi, so my name's Helen. I'm one of the music therapy team here at the RHN. And rather than a clinical case study today, I'm going to talk to you about what life's been like working as a therapist at the hospital during this last year and when COVID struck. So I thought the easiest way to do that is talk you through what a typical day looks like as a music therapist at the hospital, and then what that looked like once COVID struck. So on a typical day, we would get into our shared office, and we tend to share offices with other members of the multidisciplinary team, so other therapists, social workers, and sometimes dietitians. We'd check our emails to see what had happened since the day before, whenever we were last in. Then we might have clinical meetings, so that might be that we have a music therapy team meeting. It might be that we have a multidisciplinary meeting where we discuss patients or strategies for interventions. And then on the whole, we will have scheduled sessions or timetabled sessions with patients ahead of time. We tend to do it the week before. So they would be laid out for the day ahead of us. So we'd spend the morning ideally seeing our patients according to that timetable. And then ideally we've got a lunch break then, and during the lunch break we'd usually go back to our office. We might have lunch in the cafe outside, but generally we're using it as an opportunity for a break, and we see our colleagues and catch up with them kind of socially and clinically if we need to. Then after lunch there'd be more timetabled sessions with patients, and after those we'd spend some time note writing if we hadn't already done so, so writing up what we'd done in those clinical sessions and making our record of that. And during the day, just generally, there's the opportunity for lots of interaction with our colleagues, both socially and clinically. So just a really positive, nice environment to work with lots of different people. And then we go home. For me personally, I live quite a long way from the hospital, so that involves getting a couple of trains home at the end of the day. And then COVID hit, and obviously we had our first proper lockdown March last year. So now when we get to the hospital and when lockdown first happened, the first thing we'll be doing is putting a mask on. And then essentially, if you travel on public transport, that mask is staying on your face until you get home again. So that's obviously been something to adapt to, and particularly in the warmer weather. All staff was zoned within the hospital and restricted to a specific office. So the hospital was split into colour zones. And that was for two sort of main reasons. One was to make sure that we had a good spread of staff across the whole of the hospital to cover patient care, because we wouldn't have known what was going to happen with staffing levels, and also in order to kind of minimise how much contact we were having with different areas of the hospital and lots of different people. And we were also restricted to one specific office, and obviously that was limited how many people could be in there, so we weren't mixing with the same amount of people that we would normally day to day in the office. scrubs. So music therapists normally wear their own clothes, but since COVID's been around, we've been wearing scrubs. I'm going to talk about those a little bit more, but they are actually quite comfortable. And then we'd be getting a handover of the latest on the wards and the plan for the day, including what our role was going to be. So things were really fast changing when COVID first struck. So it was very much a case of lots of handovers and keeping up to speed with what was happening. But also at times we were needed, although we were able to keep quite a good therapy input during the last year, there were times when we were needed to, say, support the healthcare assistants on the ward with washing and dressing patients. So that was quite different, not knowing quite how we were going to be needed during the day. And then we would have a lunch break, but if you were on a ward that was on lockdown, then that meant that once you were on the ward, you weren't going to leave the ward until you went home at the end of the day. So there was no more popping back to the office for a break from the ward. It was very much you got on there and there was a chance to sit with colleagues, but not the same as usual life. And then there'd be another handover in the afternoon, because quite often things would have changed from the morning. So seeing what the plan was for the afternoon, what our role was going to be, where we were needed. And then note writing again, so writing up any clinical sessions, but also a kind of learning curve in perhaps writing up care notes that we wouldn't have been used to previously. And I think just generally there was a different feeling initially on the ward. There's a lot of apprehension, a lot of not knowing quite what was going on. There were opportunities for socialising with our colleagues during the day, because obviously we're with them, but it just felt very different to what we were used to. And then home, and that was very carefully. So as I mentioned, I used public transport, but I did for quite a while start driving, particularly when the traffic was a lot better. But that also means coming home, getting changed, having a shower before you have contact with your family. I have a 3-year-old, so for me that was quite hard, not being able to see him until I made sure I had clean clothes and was clean myself. And then in terms of sessions, we've been quite lucky the last year. We have managed to maintain a pretty good input of therapy, and that's been both face-to-face and via video platforms. So that's been really positive. But there've, of course, been adaptations within that. So we now have to wear PPE, and that's been something to adjust to when you're doing voice work whilst you're wearing a mask and a visor. It's quite challenging to try and, describe how you want a patient to shape their face if they can't see your face. And then when you're meeting new patients, you're trying to build a relationship with them when they can't fully see your face. So, it's been adapting around that and finding different ways to kind of build that trust and that therapeutic relationship. I think there's also been an element of, just getting used to variability. To some essence, we're used to timetabling our sessions and going ahead with those sessions, although obviously sometimes, there are unforeseen circumstances where we can't. But this has been very much a case of, we might have planned a session, but it's changed because a patient's needs have changed or something's changed on the ward, and adapting to that. Also location-wise, we've got lovely therapy rooms at the hospital, but obviously if you're in a lockdown ward, you can't go to those therapy rooms. So it's been about, trying to find a quiet space or a sort of safe space to see your patients. And often that was bedside or, in a quiet corner of the ward somewhere. So that's been a lot to sort of work around and just do what we can, really. So how did we cope? So these obviously are personal coping strategies to me, but I know that a lot of my colleagues have done similar. But I think one of the main things has been the team, and I can't emphasize how proud I've been to work as part of a team where everyone's just so readily stepped up into whatever role they've needed. No complaints, you've just got on with it. And I think we've needed each other to support each other sort of emotionally and clinically to get through the shifts when there's been so much uncertainty at the beginning when things started happening. And also an opportunity to kind of talk to your colleagues and discuss what's happened. There's been opportunities to vent, there's been frustration, laughter, anger, and I think it's been really important for me to be able to have that shared experience with my colleagues and to talk things through. The scrubs. So we have been extremely lucky. There was a national scrub shortage, obviously, when COVID struck, and we've had a lot of people taking it upon themselves to make scrubs for us from literally any material that you could imagine. We've had scrubs made from it. So for me, it's been quite a highlight coming in every day and not knowing which pattern of scrubs I'm going to have for the day ahead. So I thought I'd show you kind of my top 10 from the last year. I've taken a photo diary of them. So it's been quite a mix of patterns, but a lot of them are really fun, and they are super comfy to wear, as well as knowing, you know, we're obviously wearing them to keep our patients and ourselves stay safe and sort of minimize cross contact with clothing. Chocolate. So when COVID first struck, it was sort of around Easter time. So we were really lucky to receive a huge amount of Easter egg donations. And then that very quickly progressed to people really kindly donating us full meals. So for those people who were on a lockdown ward and the cafe was shut and you couldn't go and get food, those meals were just so important to have. And I think we've been really grateful to know that, you know, we've not been forgotten, and we've got that kind of external support from people. Plus, you know, coming in the morning and grabbing an Easter egg to give you some energy or fuel for the day has been really great. Talking. So I've touched on this a little bit, and for me personally, talking is an important sort of coping mechanism. I know it's not for everybody, but I think it's been apparent to me that in terms of talking to friends and family outside of work, I've kind of tempered what I've said and, you know, censored it a little bit to protect them and sort of minimize their anxiety about what we're going through. And also, again, like talking with colleagues, the opportunity to talk things through, but also to have laughter and humour is really important for me. So finding opportunities to laugh, you know, during a really stressful situation has been really important. Getting out. So I talked to a lot of my friends who have sort of more 9-to-5 office-based jobs who've now been working from home for the last year, just stuck at the same desk, and I just couldn't do it. I totally admire them and have been incredibly grateful for the opportunity to just get out of the house and go to work and see my colleagues. So that's been really important. Exercise, there's been lots of opportunities. I'm lucky enough to live near the countryside, so getting out on bike rides. Our local leisure centre put on free fitness videos that people could join in. So I think having that escapism, not having to think about things, getting some fresh air has been really important for me. And I think there's an element of, you know, this was a virus that we didn't know much about to start off with, so trying to keep as fit as possible was sort of at the back of my mind as well. Takeaways. So again, we've been very lucky with NHS discounts on lots of takeaway franchises. And although I don't need much encouragement, I think taking advantage of those and, you know, not having to cook at least once a week has been really great when you've had a really stressful week. Just have a little bit of a treat. And then most importantly has been our patients. I think you go into a profession in healthcare because you care about the people that you're looking after, but I think the patients have been absolutely amazing. They've been so supportive of us. They've shown such resilience when they've not been able to have visitors. They might not have known when they'd be going home. Their therapy sessions might have changed. Things are intense and changing on the ward, and they've just been so amazing. And this picture shows some of our patients arranged a sponsored walk for us along our longest corridor in the last year. And they did that to raise money for the hospital, which was just super. So we are very grateful that we have such amazing patients to work alongside. So I'll hand over to Amanda. Amanda, you're right to stop the share. Cool.
Sorry about that technical handover, but we're here together now. So thank you, everybody, for joining again. My name's Amanda, and I'm a music therapist at the RHN. And I work on a ward that provides level 1 neuro-rehabilitation for patients with a range of acquired brain injuries. So now I've got to figure out how to change the slide. There we go. There are nearly 1,000 hospital admissions for acquired brain injury each day in the UK. And the most common cause of for ABI includes traumatic brain injury, so whether it's an impact to the head, a violent blow, stroke, or hypoxic brain injury after a cardiac arrest. So between 2006 and 2016, there was a 10% increase in hospital admissions for ABI. And this is actually still considered to be an underestimate of what actually is occurring out there. The most common group of individuals to sustain traumatic brain injury remains boys, men, young men, but there is also an increase in the number of women that are having brain injury. So there was a 24% increase. It's not really known why there's been this increase in the female population, but once I thought was interesting to note is that the older you are, the more equal the ratio is, and it's the younger age group that have the significant difference. So in 2001, there was a head injury rehabilitation report, and they talked about noticeable improvements in emergency care and survival rates. However, neuro rehab provision for community reintegration is still considered inadequate. In 2018, the Time for Change parliamentary report provided a series of recommendations for a better link between acute care and post-acute care, improved access to neurospecialist services, and also recommended the standard use of rehabilitation prescriptions. It's not clear exactly where they are in implementing all those things, but there are a lot of recommendations out there that they're working on. And quite glad about that, because ABI has a huge range of effects, and these may be physical, they may be emotional, behavioural, chemical, and they can either cross the entire body or be really specific and target one area, infecting one skill but not others. So it also has a significant impact on cognition. So our cognition is what encompasses a wide range of complex and combined mental processes for receiving, acquiring, and making sense of any of the incoming stimuli and information that's around us. It then determines how we prioritize that information, how we react to it, and how we respond to it. So with brain injury, the most common effects of cognition that are affected are either reduced attention and concentration span, impaired working memory, reduced information processing speed, impaired reasoning, and on top of that, reduced initiative or motivation. And all those things are going to really impact how you engage in rehabilitation across the board. And so White looked into this and said that there is a clear correlation between the cognitive impairments that are present immediately after ABI and the actual rehabilitation outcomes. So whether it's a decreased likelihood of home discharge, functional outcomes, or a dependency, an ongoing dependency in activities of daily living, there is this clear correlation that he was talking about. I'm not sure what I've done. There we go. So the impact on your rehabilitation then is going to be lack of motivation to engage, or engagement in the services that are available to you, the difficulty initiating, the difficulty in actually obtaining any of the information, making sense of it, generalizing these instructions to different things, inhibiting impulsive behaviors. And then if you have behavioral issues as well, that's going to impact what you can actually engage in, what therapies you can engage in. But what's most exciting about this is that cognition can also be modified through targeted interventions, which will lead to better outcomes across rehabilitation. So cognitive rehabilitation is a set of targeted interventions that are aimed to stimulate the cognition. So whether it's going to be to restore the cognitive functioning, skills that have been lost, a reworking of various skills, strengthening skills, or creating compensatory strategies, all these things are going to work towards improving patients' lives and living conditions. There's an increased emphasis in the reports that I mentioned earlier about early intervention. The brain-behaviour relationship and the degree of efficacy is still variable across domains, so it's important that there is more research that is looking into this and finding out what exactly are the push and pulls. So, when our cognition is impaired or compromised, it's almost like we go incognito. And one of the things that has been quite widely publicised is the use of music in dementia. And so with music, it reaches back into the individual, it triggers otherwise dormant speech, memories, emotions, and almost recreates the person we know. And hence the cogito ergo sum title of this presentation. And where does music fit in? Well, music is ultimately multidimensional, and as according to Hedge in 2014, his paper, Music-Based Cognitive Remediation Therapy for Patients with Traumatic Brain Injury, he concluded that music is considered one of the best cognitive exercises because it can improve cognition, attention span, memory, organisation and problem solving. All those things that are really critical to being able to learn and adapt and move forward and look after oneself. So why music? Again, it's multidimensional. It engages in specialised parts of the brain, as well as simultaneously engaging local broader aspects of the brain. So whether it's your auditory cortex that is listening to sounds, measuring perspective, how close, how far something's away, analysing the tones, the cadence. You have your motor cortex that is going to be involved in responding to rhythm and movement. The cerebellum, also involved in movement, also supports emotional reactions to music. And the hippocampus is also involved in musical memories, experience and context. And that's just a few. So it's important with that multi sort of stimulation that we don't ever look at it as a one size fits all, because what can be stimulating for one person may be absolutely overbearing and detrimental to somebody else. And the other thing is that when we think about music, you've got to think that just putting some music on and leaving it on in the background, it will just become zoned out. You'll stop listening to anything. So when we talk about music and cognition, we're really trying to find ways to make the use of the musical structures and sounds do something specific for the individual. So there are several neurological music therapy techniques and interventions that are used specifically for cognitive remediation and adaptation. So whether it's music attention control training, where you're building up sustained attention, divided attention, selective attention, or we're talking about musical neglect training, where we're trying to use musical stimuli to compensate a compensatory strategy. Again, with musical mnemonics, it's trying to find different strategies to help somebody retain information. These specific techniques are usually done individually with people, but what we've done at the RHN is also set up a group, a cognitive stimulation focused group. And so the rest of this presentation is going to focus on that. So the aims of the group are to stimulate thinking, memory, flexible and creative expression, and social interaction, connection with others. And the group has been set up on a Monday afternoon, and it's once a week. It's a 45-minute group. It's on the ward. And whilst everything was impacted with COVID restrictions, what we have managed to do is restart this group with the large room, with attendance number control, appropriate spacing, and instrument hygiene protocols all in place. So what we want to do is engage people with a familiar structure. So every week we will be following a very similar format, but also vary whatever goes into that group. So there's new and novel things that they're being exposed to. So the hello song, we always start with a hello song, but it provides a very clear boundary that the group has begun. It gives us a nice socially appropriate greeting, but one of the things about saying the name of the individual is that it actually creates a unique brain activation. So these patterns that occur in the brain are very similar to the patterns in the brain that are observed when other self-representational behaviors are in place. So it's like your core identity and personality markers will be firing different patterns. And this is such a strong thing when you hear your own name, that they've also noticed these similar brain patterns in patients with persistent vegetative state. So it's really important that the name is used and the individual is acknowledged. Depending on their ability, we'll either encourage them to respond verbally, with eye contact, or with physical gestures. So, as I mentioned, each session will have a specific theme, and the songs and the material that we use is going to be continually reinforcing that theme. And then we'll engage in a variety of different activities, whether it's pass the sound, listening out whilst we're playing a song, or musical bingo, where all these things are trying to hone in on a sort of attention. So, for example, if we play a song, we say, listen out for the first mention of a colour, so Lady in Red. Hopefully they will associate red with the colour, and it's not a situation of knowing, it's not a matter of being right or wrong in terms of having form and knowledge, it's a matter of listening and attending to something that everybody can then participate in. Musical bingo, again, it's another way you can either give visual stimuli or verbal cues. And if the choruses have a very clear set of words over the rainbow, there as an example, then people don't necessarily have to know the song, but they can hook onto it because of hearing the actual words. So we also want to engage people's memory, whether it's recognizing artists' visuals, again, showing them something that they can respond to. What can they remember about the person? If they can't remember anything about that specific person, then, you know, what does the fashion, style, or sense say to them? Is there something that it reminds them of? And the other things we use are either finish the line in the song, put the word in at the end, but again, very familiar songs that there's a high likelihood of people knowing without consciously knowing that they know these songs. So My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean is always one that comes to mind with a certain age group, and then there could be something else if we know that we're in a different, you know, if the group's made up and comprised of younger people. The organisation, on one occasion we've done an activity that has involved making a shaker. So there would be a list of instructions and, you know, very simple shaker making process, and, you know, also includes decision making. What kind of sound do you want? Do you want chickpeas in there to make a sound, or do you want rice, etc.? And sort of engaging them that way. So going back to the songs that were either selected in the musical bingo or somewhere else within the session, we'll then offer the opportunity to choose between the two songs and then engage the group with either singing along or playing with a maraca or a hand percussion instrument, or just even moving their body so that they are participating in the actual song. So overall, it's quite a cognitive workout. They're usually exhausted at the end of it, but they've all thoroughly enjoyed it. And what we as therapists are looking for as we go throughout that group is, where is their level of comprehension? Are they understanding the conversation, responding appropriately? Are they engaging in decision making clearly? Are they remembering things? Is there any carryover from one session to the next that they are bringing? Whilst there is a continuous Monday afternoon group, because we're on this ward that has a cycling of patients, each group is designed to stand alone. But of course, if people are coming for 3 or 4 or 5, 12 weeks in a row, then we want to make sure that we can be monitoring what they are bringing each week. Flexibility, how can they move between the different stimuli that's being presented? How willing are they to try new and unknown things? And their overall participation. So in summary, I just wanted to conclude by saying that cognitive impairments are incredibly important in ABI rehabilitation, and obviously with their impact on all other areas, it's really critical that we keep that cognitive focus in the rehab that we're doing. It leads to these improved rehabilitation outcomes. And music is a hugely motivating and engaging stimuli, not for everybody, but for an awful lot of people. And it's going to, there's a tongue twister, simultaneously stimulate multiple areas of the brain. So we want to do that. We want to do it, but not overburden people, because also they have had a brain injury and we need to be accommodating and adjusting and not overburdening people. One of the things about the group that we're doing it once a week, but if you think about Spectre's cognitive stimulation therapy, I think they have a 14-week period of 3 sessions a week. And so whether or not we look at expanding it to incorporate other cog rehab programs, it might be something for us to look at. And, you know, that's something we're considering. But there is like this really good positive correlation between music and cognition, seen especially in the research on dementia. So what I would like to do is look at different ways that we can research the role of music therapy in cognitive neurorehabilitation. So that's what we've been working on, and I'd like to thank you all for listening, and I'm now going to hand over to Roseanne. So thank you.
Hello again. So this is a case study on a lady who came to the RHN, and it's considering functional as well as emotional aspects. So a bit of background. She suffered a stroke in 2017 and she was admitted in January 18, initially with quite low cognition. She was unable to speak. There was gradual improvement in cognition and speech over the time, and she commenced music therapy sessions with me in May 19. The intervention intervention's been numerous, so it's song singing with musicals, which she liked musicals, and particularly with duets. She improved confidence. She had low self-esteem initially. And we also developed some improvisation together. She initially had challenging behaviour due to some impulsivity, and we worked on a couple of short songs to help her to stop, think and breathe. I also used musical attention control training, an NNT technique, and quite a lot of song parody and song creation. So those domains in a little bit more detail. In terms of cognition, as I said, I started with MACT, and this was an exercise for alternating attention, where I'd play low notes on the piano and she'd play the drum, or when I played high notes on the cymbal, high notes on the piano, she would play the cymbal. And then that moved in. She started off with just the 2 instruments, and she actually went up to 5 to 6. So then it was middle of the piano, arpeggios for the chimes, short staccato notes for the xylophone, etc., etc. And that's actually quite difficult to swap attention between one thing and another, and she did really well with that over time. So in terms of the slight behavioural challenge, as I say, she was impulsive at times, particularly with nursing staff. She became impatient, and especially in personal care. So the psychologist requested song intervention to assist her processing what needs to happen in order for her care to be carried out. So I created a couple of songs, one relating to that and one relating to her sort of breathing pattern to help her breathe. So this is just one of the very, very short songs. 25th of June 19, R, to remember. Turn off the TV, go to a quiet place. I want to remember, so I can write it down. Can you repeat it, please? Can you repeat it, please? Take a breath, slow down. Take a breath, slow down. And the next one was on breathing, to help her breathing. 9th of July, breathing, R. And these were given to her on a CD so that she could play them and learn them and assimilate them into her everyday experience on the ward. So that when we moved quite quickly into, I suggested perhaps songwriting with her, and we initially started with some song parody, which you probably know means making up some different words to a tune that's already known. And as I said, this lady likes musicals, so she decided to put her her journey to do with friends and family on to, I think it's Beauty and the Beast, I think.
Friends and Family with Ruth and Roseanne.
It's a little bit quiet, so it's not your machine, it's this one, I think.
Tale as old as time. Time as it can be. We are just good friends. Then something ends unexpectedly. Just a little
So that's some of the words, just in case you didn't quite hear them. And she formed them quite quickly. So then we moved on to songwriting. I like these couple of quotes. Song creation. Songwriting can act as an outlet for held emotions and provide a means for the communication of thoughts and feelings that are normally difficult to express verbally. That's O'Brien. And then I felt I needed to empower her to provide, as much control as possible. So this is another quote. Empowerment is particularly important for patients with a TBI as much of their lives are beyond their control. I also wanted to use her creativity and for her to have a sense of fulfillment in the songwriting process. She crafted songs quite quickly. The words I slightly assisted, and then we did the music together with options. So I literally say, what genre would you like? And then what accompaniments? And then do you want, in terms of the melody, do you want going up or do you want going down? So each choice she made. And so this is another example, video example, and this is of her journey, her rehabilitation journey. So I'll just read out a little bit of the words just in case you can't hear them. It's been a long, rough road. Now things are looking up. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. Have wheels will travel. I found myself in Queen Square alone and unaware. Although the sun still shone, I was gone. I came to the RHN and found a new home. With everybody's care, I know I'm not alone. From being sad and depressed, I'm happy and not stressed. I've been to lots of places and seen so many faces. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'll reach my goals. The journey may be long, but I'll stay strong.
Okay. My Journey by Ruth Balkansky, January 2020.
And then I suggested that she might like to write a song about the experience of being here over the COVID time. And we decided on a song parody, again, from I Will Survive. And these words she put together really, really quickly. At first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking COVID would ruin my life. But then I spent so long staring at four walls and I grew strong. I learned how to get along. But now it's back, never went away. I'm still looking at four walls, wondering how to spend the day. Doing colouring and puzzles do not really entertain. Daytime TV is driving me insane. So go on now back to China, just turn around now because you're not wanted anymore. You tried to hurt us with the infection. Did you think I'd give up? Did you think I'd lay down and die? Oh, not I will survive. As long as I know how to breathe, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, I've got all my love to give, and I'll survive, I'll survive. And I'll leave you just to read the next verse. Okay, so I'm just going to play this. Just going to see if I can get it any louder.
Ruth Balkanski, COVID song. I will survive. At first I was afraid, I was petrified, kept thinking COVID would ruin my life. But then I spent so long staring at the walls and I grew strong. I learned how to get along, but now it's back, never went away. I'm still looking at the walls, wondering how to spend the day. Doing colouring and puzzles do not really entertain. Daytime TV is driving me insane, and I go back to China. Just turn around now, 'cause you're not wanted anymore. You tried to hurt us with the infection. Did you think I'd give up? Did you think I'd lay down and die? I will survive. As long as I know how to breathe, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, I've got all my love to give. I will survive, I will survive, hey. Tore the strap I had not to fall apart. Kept trying to keep in touch, not breaking my heart. Spent so many nights just feeling sorry for myself. I used to cry, but now I hold my head up high and you see me, somebody new. I'm not that worried little girl, so afraid of you. Thought you came back and expected to get me, but now I'm saving my life. See you loving me, you're not gone. I'll survive. As long as I know how to breathe, I know I'll stay alive. I've got all my life to live, I've got all my love to give. We'll survive, we'll survive.
So she did improve a lot over the time, both with the functional aspects of, sort of cognition and memory, and also she had an experience of expressing herself with her journey, and her self-confidence really improved. Her own report is that music therapy helped me focus, and because of my love for musical theatre, I've become more confident to sing. I've done things I never thought I would be able to. I never thought I would write a song. And then these are some references. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I think we've got time for a few questions now. If anyone's got any, if you'd like to submit them, just type them to the Q&A button, possibly to the bottom of your screen or to the right-hand side. So to start off with, oh, bear with me.
I have a question for Helen, if I can ask it.
Yeah, of course.
I was just wondering, Helen, if there was anything specific that you would keep from the COVID days, not that we're out of the COVID days, but out of the changes that happened during COVID. Is there something that you would keep, and is there something that you can't wait to get rid of?
Good question. So I favour the scrubs because they're really comfy and I don't have to worry about what I'm wearing to work each day now. I don't have to think about it. It's decided for me. One thing that I've really treasured actually from the experience is, I mean, we work really closely as a team anyway, but that kind of shared experience that we've had, I think, you know, has given us something that we'll keep as a team together going forward forever. It's something, you know, that we've experienced together and got through. So yeah, that element would be good. And the thing I'd like to take away is probably the zones so that we can just wander freely again in the hospital grounds.
Yeah.
So we've got a question here. Will there be a questionnaire? Do you do a questionnaire to assess the compliance, to know whether there's progress and how often it needs to be checked?
Yes, we do. We have a number of sort of outcome measures and assessment measures, and one of those is patient feedback. So we do have a questionnaire for those who are able to fill it in, and we also have a visual analog mood scale in terms of measuring mood. And there's a lot of little measures we use to measure progress.
Brilliant, thank you. And we've got a question from Sophie. Is music therapy provided in every rehabilitation unit?
I don't think so. I think it's highly variable, and it's still quite dependent on charity funding rather than specific NHS funding for it as a primary service. So in the core team, we here are funded through the fundraising team as opposed to NHS money or core services.
Thank you. And we've got something from Trudy. She says, I was a patient, hi Trudy, I was a patient in the brain injury service at RHN for 6 months, 5 years ago. Music therapy was really important to me. My key worker was a music therapist. Do you need, and did you get any extra training for such a role?
You want to answer that, Helen?
Oh, as a key worker, I think they're probably asking Trudy. So yes, because there are lots of responsibilities as a key worker. So we get some training and support from the team as to how to take on that role. And fortunately, all the therapy disciplines take roles as key workers. So, you know, it's something that we can share with each other in terms of experience, or if we need support from each other on what our sort of tasks are to get through. That's the question.
Thank you. And we've got another question here that's quite interesting. So Suresh says, I'm a young psychiatrist and I'm passionate about switching to a music therapist career. I'm a songwriter and composer as much as I am a clinician. How would you start? How would you go about beginning a career in music therapy?
Well, there's usually the routine is a sort of music degree, or sometimes they take people with a social work or psychology degree, but there's a music therapy training, which is an MA training, and there's about 7 courses in the country, I think, and you apply that way, and the course covers all sorts of things, like improving your playing, but adapting your playing to the clinical settings and learning about child development and psychological development, having your own therapy. It's really quite in-depth, but a really interesting course.
Brilliant. And a question from Ash, is there a limit to the amount of music therapy a patient can have per day or per week?
I think it really depends how many other things they have going on that day and what their course of treatment program is, because what you don't want to do is exhaust somebody who's got brain injury. you're going to have diminishing returns. So it's a matter of planning and plotting when they can have what they have. But what we do notice is that quite often we can put music into different disciplines. So we do joint combined work with physical therapy or with occupational therapy or speech language therapy. And the music then acts as either a motivator for sustained engagement in physical therapy. It helps whether, movement, with motor entrainment. We can work with speech language therapy to help apraxia, dyspraxia, expressive aphasia. So working very closely on what the plan is for that individual person and whether music is going to have diminishing returns or optimal returns for that pathway.
And another question I think that follows on from that, do you limit the number of participants for the cognitive group?
So we do, but that's based on COVID restrictions at the moment. So we have it limited to 4 with the possibility of 5 depending on how the room is set up. If we were not in a COVID scenario, then we would most probably limit it to 8 people. I think 6 is a really nice number for a group. 8 is good. I think any more than that, it gets a little too overwhelming with everything that's going on, because you do want to be able to give everybody sort of specific attention, and so it's just making sure that it's working synergistically for everybody.
Thank you. Are there any online resources that people can utilise?
For what specifically though, because there's plenty of stuff out on Google, but it depends what you're looking for.
From Ash, they haven't specified. No, it's just a very general question.
Was Ash the one that was looking into training as music therapists? So BAMT, obviously the British Association of Music Therapy, will give you an abundant amount of information and resources about where to train, what other information about what music therapy is, how it works, where you can find a music therapist, etc. But Rosanne, did you have other areas that you were thinking about?
Well, there's a manual for a cognitive stimulation group, if you're referring to that. So I don't know whether you're referring to music therapy or the cognitive stimulation group. So there's that if you look at cognitive stimulation therapy. Yes.
That was actually done by a lady at UCL in London. It was cognitive stimulation therapy as an actual therapeutic intervention. It's a 13-week program that they've designed, and there is specific training for cognitive stimulation therapy group, which is not just music. Music is one component of the program that they have.
Okay, we are swiftly running out of time, but just one more question. It's quite interesting. Could you just talk briefly about the process of music therapy for locked-in patients?
That can be varied, but it's according to their communication. So quite often it's eye gaze, or if they haven't got anything else, but sometimes there's a slight head nod or a slight movement for yes and no. And a lot of that is usually emotionally based work, and a lot of it is usually songwriting. So that they might write the words onto the screen, or sometimes they write it ahead of time and email it to you. And then I've done quite a lot of songwriting with someone with locked-in syndrome, where the choices were literally single. Do you want this melody, or do you want that melody? So it's the yes and no responses. So you build up the song with them really, really slowly. Yes, and that's how it sort of develops. And sometimes it might be also receptive listening, and then perhaps discussing the music together via eye gaze or via alphabet chart as well, or via yes/no responses. So encouraging sort of social interaction and emotional expression that way as well.
Okay, thank you. I mean, we've got quite a few more questions, but we've run out of time. So if anyone has a burning question, do get in touch with us. You've got our number, or drop us an email and we'll be delighted to come back to you. Just want to say thank you so much to the team. Thank you for your presentations and your case studies. Thank you to all of you for joining us. This lecture will also be recorded and it will be on the website next week. So for anyone who's missed it, any of your colleagues, just let them know. We'll have it online soon. So thank you, everyone.